I think after what you've heard today, you likely understand that 2016 is going to be a transition year for us. We're moving from our research and testing phases and into true implementation of how we will conduct the census in 2020. In order to do this, we will have a few major tests in 2016. The first will be called the 2015 Simulated Field Operations Test for the 2020 census. This will be a simulation exercise similar to the one we conducted in November of 2014 and that you heard about from Stephanie Studs earlier today. We would like to further test how our enhancements from 14 experience, from the 15 experience, apply to the 2016 tests. We'll have a 2016 field operations test for the 2020 census, a 2016 early operations test, and that will lead to a 2017 early operations test. And now I'll just step through each of those tests quickly. As I mentioned, the simulation exercise will be scheduled for the fall of 2015. Similar to what we did for 2014. The focus this time will be enhanced functionality to our Mojo operational control system. We're really going to look at how we optimize the creation of our assignments. How do we consider traffic patterns when we're sending enumerators out into the field? How do we incorporate the use of enhanced mapping software, including the use of turn-by-turn navigation? And as I've mentioned several times today, we'll be incorporating lessons learned from the 2015 census test. This simulation will again occur in the CAT lab here at the Census Bureau and will be a true simulation of what the operational control system is doing. Let's move now to the 2016 field operations test. This test will have an April 1st Census Day. The focus of this test will be self-response and non-response. In terms of self-response, we'll test targeted communications and partnerships to help us promote our language support options and to reach historically hard-to-count populations. The 2016 field operations test will be the first test in which we try to host Centurion, our enumeration instrument that we use on the internet, in a cloud-based environment. Finally, we'll continue to test and further enhance our ability to conduct real-time non-ID processing, as Evan mentioned earlier. In regard to non-response follow-up, this test will determine our strategy for the 2020 census. By then, we'll have a really good feel and we'll have good measures as to how we can use administrative records in the census and how we can use our adaptive contact strategies. At this point in the decade, we will make the decision as to how we're going to move forward in 17, 18, and then finally for 2020. In terms of location, we'd like this test to occur in an urban area, and ideally one in which has a SNAP agreement in place, a Supplemental Nutrition and Assistance Program agreement. Why would we like that? We'd like to be able to test the use of administrative records that are provided from state sources. And this source is a good source of information that we may not be able to get from some of the other sources. What else are we going to test during this test? We will begin integrating the operational control system that we're using now, Mojo, with our enterprise-wide multi-mode operational control system. We'll be moving from what we've learned with Mojo into our official system that we plan to use for 2020. For the first time, we'll have automated applications for our field recruiting and administration processes. We'll have an online job application for the 2016 census test. We'll use web-based technology to help us manage our decennial applicants, our personnel, and our payroll. We will use a dashboard to help us track our staffing progress, and we'll use an online system for training, similar to what we've been doing already. This test will include re-engineered quality control, and we'll really begin to focus here on quality and control. Carol just asked a few questions about how will you collect information in the field and how will you conduct re-interviews. The information that we collect as part of the COMPASS instrument, the instrument that's used to enumerate those non-responding households, That's providing us with a lot of paradata about what's happening during the interview. When is the interview occurring? How long is the interview occurring? In addition, the devices are collecting GPS control points, so we know, is the person at the household or are they somewhere else? Are they in their living room? Are they at a restaurant? This is much different than the way we've done business in the past. Typically, we'd have to do a whole re-interview operation where we'd send a subset of enumerators out in the field to double-check the work. This also gives us the opportunity to correct any errors much sooner than we have been able to do in the past. Finally, during this test, we'll continue to test the concept of bring your own device. The 2016 early operations test will occur in the summer and fall of 2016. The focus of this test will be address canvassing. You've heard a lot about how we're changing the way we do business in terms of in-field and in-office address canvassing. This test will allow us to implement our plan and see how it works. During this test, we'll continue to use our listing and mapping instrument, the LIMA application. So far, we've had very good luck with this application. I like this example. Every week I have to report to the Executive Steering Committee about the progress of the 2015 census tests and the tests that we have in the field. And so Tuesday I was getting ready to go upstairs to John and Nancy, and I asked my team to brief me, and they said, well, we have one major glitch with the LIMA. And I said, well, what is that? Well, we're doing partial block canvassing now. And I said, yes. And they said, well, the weather's very cold and it's very difficult to be out there without gloves. So we found our glitch. It's not that big of a glitch. We may have to provide our enumerators, our listers, with the gloves that operate on the handheld devices in order to help them keep warm, but I think we can solve that problem pretty easily. During the 16 test, in terms of address canvassing, we're also going to look at a different unit of geography to help us collect the information. Traditionally, we've sent our enumerators out and we've given them maps of their assignment areas. Within those assignment areas, we've included collection blocks. That was the geography we used. There are 11 million blocks across the nation, and so we're studying the use of a new geography, which we refer to as the basic collection unit. This collection unit, unlike blocks of the past, will follow visible features. It will continue to be the building block for other geographies. We'll have about 25 to 100 housing units within each basic collection unit, and there will be about 1 to 2 million of these basic collection units nationwide. We're not sure if it's going to work, but it's a good opportunity for us to test it out. Finally, for the first time in our research and testing program, we're going to take the updates, the address and the spatial updates that we collect in the field, ingest those updates, process them, and apply them to the MapTiger system. And so that will help us further build the foundation that we use to have a good frame and a good spatial database for 2020. In terms of location here, we'd like to include a broad area so that we can test our in-field address canvassing approaches, and then we'd like to have more specific areas that we can carry over for the 2017 test. Specifically an urban area, one of which who has participated in the Geographic Support System Initiative. If you've been following our geography program and our initiative, you know that we've been continually trying to update our address and spatial database. We would like participants to constantly send us their information so we continually update our files. We'd like to see what a file, what it looks like, what our database looks like for a participant who has continually done this, and so we'd like that to be part of the focus. We'd like to have an area with a different time zone than headquarters so we can test our operational control centers and how they transfer information between our centers. We'd also like to include representation of the limited English proficiency population. The other area of focus will be an Indian reservation, most likely located in a rural area. What else will we do in this early operations test? We'll continue to test the use of English and Spanish online response options, but also consider other language support. For the first time, we'd like to have an instrument that has the ability to conduct address listing and enumeration on the same handheld device, so that we could say to a enumerator, today you're going to do listing, when tomorrow you're going to do enumeration, or perhaps you're going to do both on the same day. We haven't had that capability before. Again, we'd like to manage our operations out of multiple operational control centers. Finally, and this is a big one, this test will be the one in which we integrate our data collection, our data processing, and our data tabulation processes in terms of the systems, the CEDCAP systems, the enterprise-wide systems. There's quite a few listed. I won't run through them all. Just to give you some examples, how do we process the data, our control and response data processing system? How do we move to our new operational control system, MOX? Again, for some of the units that we don't collect a response via the internet and we have to have a paper form returned, how do we process that information? We'll use what we call ICADE, the Integrated Capture and Data Entry. Again, Centurion's our internet instrument, and Compass is the instrument that is on the handheld computer. And finally, just to show you that we are thinking ahead, how does this apply to 2017? We'll have a big integrations test on April 1st of 2017. This will be the test in which we determine how one operation impacts another. We're doing a lot of work now. We're going to release the operational plan September, October of this year. We're going to continue enhancing and refining the work we've done. We're going to build on more of those 34 operations. This test will use the work we do during the 2016 test during address canvassing to build the address frame. We'll do work in this test related to update enumerate, and mentioned early in the day how we're going to combine a few operations this time. Update leave, update enumerate, remote update Alaska. How does this work together, especially after we've done address canvassing? We'll continue to focus on communications, on partnerships, on our self-response options. We'll study during this test group quarters populations and special populations very specifically. And then we'll continue to look at quality control. We must do this test, this integrations test in 17, to help us prepare for our big test, our end-to-end test that we'll conduct in 2018. And that will be our final opportunity to be out there in the field, to get ready and be ready for the 2020 census. Any questions about the 2016 census scope?
With respect to using the handheld for, in I guess the 2016 is the Indian Reservation rural area, will you be using the handheld or paper to do enumeration?
That's yet to be determined. In some Indian areas, we have very good address information and spatial information. In other areas, it's lacking. We'll just have to see where we are in the decade in terms of how we've progressed and what may be best for our plans for 2020.
On the what else slide, where your integration with CEDCAP systems, and there's a number of systems, that's very, I think that's very good, and it's also very ambitious. And I don't get it. I'm not sure how it reconciles with the fact that the focus is on the address canvassing, though.
There are two. There are two tests, the early operation test feeds. And this slide is just trying to say in 2016, that will be the year in which we have to integrate with our CEDCAP systems. The movement of Stephanie Studs from the Rocket team to the Innovation and Implementation Office, I think, will be a big win for us here, because she's been through the development of the operational control system for Rocket and for the work we're doing in 2013, 2014, 2015. She gets it. And she understands all the divisions and the directorates within the Census Bureau and has a lot of connections across the agency. So that always helps. Okay, how's everyone doing? Ready to move on to the wrap-up? Okay, thank you. All right, so very quickly, thank you again. I can tell you over the past 3 months, I've become more and more exposed to the decennial directorate, the decennial environment, what life is like when you have to interact with oversight, with external stakeholders. I didn't always understand the value, but I think I do now. I appreciate what you have to bring to the table. I'm really grateful that you're here today, that you're willing to sit through a full day of presentations and really provide us a lot of helpful information. So thank you. And feel free, when we're done, to call us, to interact with us. We really appreciate that. We've talked about a lot today. Lisa started off by talking about the reorganization of our decennial directorate. It is one of our top priorities to make sure this is a success. We realize that we have to have the right team in place. It has to be the best team. This census is going to be like no other. We need the brightest, the smartest, the hardest working people to make sure this gets done, and I believe that we can make that happen. I encourage you to look at the organizational charts that we shared earlier today to get an understanding. You know, Dan had a question about what will be located in the field infrastructure area. Those org charts really lay out the different branches that are part of our new organization. If you have any questions, feel free to call us. Those org charts will also help you identify the people that you'll be working with over the next few years. And another one of our top priorities is to make sure that we get this design decision done by September of 2015, and we can share it with you in October. The team that's established and is working on this effort is a good one. They've made a lot of progress. Ann said this morning they kicked off the team on November 20th. I think it's pretty amazing, the work that they were able to do, especially considering the holidays. We are poised to move into the implementation phase. We've had great success with our applications, our internet instrument, our Compass instrument. We need to further refine those instruments and that technology, but we're making great progress. And these tests do give us a good opportunity to continually study what we're doing. Ty, I promise that we will share the assessments as soon as they're finished. I think that's it for today. Again, thank you for your participation, your attendance. Dan has a final question.
Just one really quick thing, just seeing the date up there for the next one being
Yes.
April 8th.
Yes, yes,
Is
yes.
there a rationale for it being Wednesday rather than Friday?
That Friday is Good Friday.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Dan. That was an important slide. So yes, the next PMR is April 8th. It's a Wednesday, not a Friday, so please note that on your calendars. Tentatively note that the following PMR is now scheduled for July 10th. We welcome your feedback. Our email address is listed up there on the slide. Feel free to email us, call us. We would like your comments on this PMR by January 23rd so that we can incorporate them in the documentation that we post online. Thank you, everyone.